Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you ready to take your piano journey to the next level? Introducing the PianoInspires.com subscription, your gateway to inspiration, education, and community. With a PianoInspires.com subscription, you'll gain exclusive access to hundreds of teaching videos and webinars led by today's top piano educators and performers. Whether you're a teacher, student, new professional, or lifelong learner, you'll find resources designed to inspire and guide you every step of the way. Your subscription also includes access to Piano Magazine, featuring the most current and up-to-date information for pianists and piano teachers. Each issue delivers expert insights, interviews, new music and book reviews, and more to keep you connected to the ever-evolving world of piano teaching and performance. Visit pianoinspires.com/subscribe and use coupon code podcast15 to subscribe for less than $3 per month. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast and enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Snow, the president and CEO of the Francis Clark Center. And today on the Piano Inspires podcast, we're joined by Dr. Gary Ingle. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, this is going to be a thrilling hour. I first want to share with everybody some of the highlights of Gary's resume, which is so extensive, it would take the whole hour to go through it. But most of us know you as the CEO and executive director of MTNA, the Music Teachers National Association. And Gary led that organization for 28 years through so much transformation, and I'm looking forward to talking with you about that. You've been a mentor to so many of us, myself included. And of course, along with all of those things, you've held volunteer leadership positions, including with American Classical Music Hall of Fame, the National Music Council, the Music Council of the Three Americas, the International Society for Music Education, the Chopin Foundation of the United States, and the Canadian Chopin Society. You are a frequent speaker and panelist. I've been inspired by many of your keynotes, and you've given addresses in all 50 states, as well as to music groups in Canada, the UK, China, Eastern and Western Europe, South America, and Africa. Global. This gives us the whole concept of global. Your advocacy efforts for music have been featured on both television and radio programs. In addition to all of your accomplishments, you hold a Doctor of Musical Arts degree in conducting and voice, and you were a professor of music at Southwest Baptist University and directed multiple choirs on international tours. Welcome to the Piano Inspires podcast, Gary.
Thank you. I'm tired just listening to it.
How many Gary Ingles are there? We're going to unpack that now.
Only one.
Well, we love on this podcast to kind of unravel to the beginning and find out how music first touched you. What are your first memories and how music became the focus of your life?
Well, my performance career started when I was 6 years old. And it's not like you hear from the great artists that they played concertos. When I was in the first grade, I was selected to play the tick-tock on the song My Grandfather's Clock. I had to audition for it among all of the others, but I was the one selected to play the tick-tock, and I played it with gusto, and I had a great time doing that. Probably the most important thing in my life musically was when I was growing up. My family moved to a small country town, farming town, and my maternal grandparents lived with us. And they were ardent Sacred Harp music singers. Sacred Harp music is, shaped music. It's the early American tradition where the singers are all amateurs. They come together every Sunday. They sit in a square, a hollow square by voice part, and they have a leader in the center, and they all switch leaders with every song. And my grandparents were leaders within the Sacred Harp music scene in Alabama and Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, that area. And as a young 9, 10-year-old, I'd much rather go with them on Sundays to the singings than to go to regular church. So I convinced my parents to let me to go with my grandparents to the singing. So I got to watch my grandfather conduct the group, and I think that started my interest in choral music, which I ultimately got my doctorate in. But even today, I go on YouTube, and many of the Sacred Harp YouTube videos feature my grandfather because he was such a beloved conductor.
Wow, that's immersive.
It really had an impact on my life. And then we moved back to Birmingham from this small town when I was in high school, and that's when I really got the bug for conducting in both the high school choir that I sang in, as well as the church choir. And the church choir was the kind of the breeding ground for my getting into music on a full-time basis. And from there, it's history. I went to college, and here we are.
When you were with your grandparents in that environment, at home with your parents, did your parents also participate in singing? Was it something that, do you have siblings? Was it in your home as well, or was this a very special thing that you had with your grandparents?
Mainly the special thing with the grandparents. Now, my mother was a Sacred Harp singing aficionado, and she would go to the singings, but was never into the leading or the conducting. And it's not really anything that, because it's group singing, it's not anything that you do in the privacy of your home. So other than, just regular popular music, that was, Sacred Harp was about the extent of it.
So when you came back into Birmingham and you were in school music programs and really getting excited about sort of this idea of, leading people in music, I already see the theme from small Gary in those wonderful settings to Gary now. When was it? Was it peer groups? Were there teachers that really stood out for you? What was it that really sort of captured you so you thought, I want to go to university for this?
Well, the main influence was what in Southern Baptist churches is called the minister of music. And he sort of mentored me, and that gave me opportunities to conduct not just the youth choir, but to conduct the adult choir at times. And I sang a lot of solos and the like. So he was the one who inspired me to get into music. And it was via the church initially. And that's one of the challenges that I faced early on, was that I had not intended over most of my education up through high school to do music. I didn't take piano lessons until I was, again, 9 or 10 years old, and like a typical 9 or 10-year-old boy, I didn't hang in there with it. But then once I got interested in potentially going to school, to college, and majoring in music, I got serious about it and started taking piano lessons again with Miss Downey, who was determined that I would not only be able to play a bit, but also to know my theory. So she got me going with my studies, And my choral director, Bobby McCullough, was really encouraged me in that direction, and again was giving me opportunities.
And so here you are, you're coming up. You have a lot of opportunities in pre-college. You have a lot of opportunities as a high school student. You're cultivating your leadership skills, your leading of groups, being in music, and the study of theory would have given you all that background you needed for choral scores and score readings. So your teachers saw this in you. You went to university with a vision for being a church musician, being a professor, what were your dreams at that junction?
My dreams at that junction was to be a church musician, to work full time in Baptist churches, directing choirs and leading the music programs. And in fact, as soon as I started to college, I got my first part-time church job, where I got to start honing my skills and actually working with people in a church and musical situation. And I had a church job continuously for most of my higher education and my college teaching career. It wasn't until I got into association management that I stopped conducting a church choir.
When you were in school, so you have it's intertwined. Your personal life, your church life, your studies, you're coming through your master's and your doctorate. Did you do all of that all at one time? Like you started and you went right through? And then you're coming towards the end of the degree. You're already working. You're already in community. You're very active in those areas. Did you, at that point, decide, I think I'd like to go into higher education. I'd like to be a professor. Was it something that came open? Where did you go from that moment?
Once I got my master's degree, I got the degree and had a full-time church job at the same time. And I had this idea that maybe I wanted to be an attorney.
Oh.
My mentor at the time was encouraging me in that direction, and the new copyright law had just been passed in the mid-'70s. And I thought, well, this might be a good way to make a living, have a law degree and a master's degree in music, go into copyright law, and the rest would be history. But after a year of, I resigned my church, started going full-time and doing a law degree, and did a year. And, there are no accidents. And I soon realized that I missed the interaction with people, and that, I really didn't want to do law for my life. I didn't know at the time, though, that my legal studies for that 1 year would come into play so much as an association executive.
Right.
Because it's so much, there's so many legal issues, and ultimately it worked to the advantage of MTNA and in many senses, in that I had enough knowledge of the law to be dangerous.
But that's rare. It's rare that at that point, as an artist, you're sort of intrigued by something else, that you actually pursued it, and then you come away with a certain amount of knowledge and understanding that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't done that.
Absolutely.
And probably the most critical piece you came away with was that you wanted your life to be in music. And then you acquired knowledge and skills. So there's never wasted time. And I think young people who are pursuing a career, who often feel they're not sure if they can see their life in music or something else might interest them, to understand that the path will unfold in front of you, and that no matter what you do, if you end up doing another degree or doing other focus for a while, and then you come back to music, you only bring all those riches with you.
Exactly. And the other benefit from the legal study was that anyone who has a law degree knows how grueling it is. And if you've seen the television shows with the professors in law that are intimidating and the like, and making it a very, very stressful situation, well, going through that for a year made doctoral work so much easier. When my colleagues and fellow students at the doctoral level were just going bonkers with stuff, I'm saying, this is nothing compared to law school. So again, all of our experiences help us with so many things in our lives. And some would say, well, that was a mistake getting into law and diverting for a year. But it really wasn't. It was a necessary part of my own life's journey to find certainty in the fact that I really wanted to be involved in music with my life. And it was at that point that I decided, well, I was going to spend 3 years in law school to get a JD. Why not spend 3 years in college and get my doctorate in music? So it was at that point that I decided to go to seminary in Louisville to get my DMA, and with the idea, again, of coming back and working in churches. But once I got into the program, the head of the doctoral program, on the basis of my scores and all, said, you really need to be in the performance research, the top area, rather than in church music. I said, fine. So I was in performance research, in conducting voice, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it was at that point that the whole idea of teaching at in higher education was a possibility for me. So I started leaving behind the idea of work in the church, and instead in the university to prepare young people for their own careers.
Very interesting that you come to this point and you go into law school. You have these sort of epiphanies about where you want to go. Then when you start your doctoral work, I mean, you this is sort of a transformative year, this 1 year in law school, in many ways, including understanding being in a totally different culture. You've been in immersive music culture your whole life and sacred music culture your whole life. Then you were in a secular, basically academic culture, professional school and law school, which had a completely different culture, and you're surrounded by all these new people. So when you come to start your doctorate, you're bringing a lot of understanding and gravitas about what you want to do. And then for that to open this door to a whole other universe, really, of opportunities and thinking and about who you will be in the world. That sort of broadening is like sort of opening up of like a flower.
And that continues throughout my career in terms of seeing other possibilities and letting them blossom. I mentioned my mentor, who was the dean of the School of Music at Samford while I was there, and he took me under his wing as an undergraduate and opened me up to this idea of administration. Now, my career goal was, I love being a conductor and in front of people, and you know, they obey so well when you give that downbeat. But he started me with the idea of administration, management, leadership, and I soaked up everything I could from him. He ultimately went from there and became the president of a university. So he was a musician who had gotten into administration, and so I was open to it. And I began my teaching career in 1983 as director of choral activities at Southwest Baptist. And within a year, there was a vacancy in the chair of the music department there, and they asked me to take it because of my interest in administration, and that was the beginning of moving more and more out of conducting and teaching and more into higher education administration.
That is fascinating when you think about, I mean, these are your natural tendencies. So, you're moving and moving. You're always a leader. You're always leading. From that time as a young child, watching your grandfather lead, you're leading, you're moving, these mentors that you encounter. It's sort of a double path. It's the path of you pursuing your leadership trajectory, and at the same time being very conscious of community, mentorship, and education. Because you keep referencing, students and your role in those leadership roles of making sure that you're taking care of people. And I might use the word shepherding in the sense that when you are running a music school, you're looking after faculty, you're looking after students, you're looking after programs. There's a lot of stewardship, which brings us to probably one of the most interesting decisions of your life, I would imagine, about how you became the CEO of MTNA.
Well, as I progressed through the ranks in higher education, I became a vice president for enrollment management, and had gotten to the point that while I enjoyed it, my next logical step would have been probably getting a presidency of a college or a university. And as a vice president, I learned very quickly, in the same way that I learned with law school, that I really didn't want to be the president of a college or a university. I really wanted to be go back and be a dean. That was my favorite position of all in higher ed. And my feeling was that a successful dean and a successful school has basically two things to do, and that is recruit students and fundraise. So I had the experience of recruiting students as the VP over admissions, and I was quite successful with that and could have stayed with it if I'd wanted. But so I had that experience, and what I felt I needed was fundraising experience. So the position of executive director of Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia, the music fraternity, became available, and as part of that was the position of the executive director of the Sinfonia Foundation. So I thought this might be a nice interlude to where I could still be working with students in Phi Mu Alpha, but also learn the ropes of national fundraising through the Sinfonia Foundation and get that built up. And then after 3 or 4 years, I'd go back into higher education and find a good deanship somewhere and live happily ever after.
Well, the thing is, once you got out of higher ed.
Yeah. So I went to Phi Mu Alpha for 3 years. And it's one of those things of, as one of my favorite writers, Joseph Campbell, says, follow your bliss.
Yes.
And that's what I had been doing, even though it was not a straight line. I was following my bliss. And in like September, October of 1996, I was at a music education symposium in Washington, D.C. It was during the time of the standards, the music education standards in the schools, and I was involved with that and went to this symposium. And as I was wont to do when I go to meetings like that, is I typically stand in the back so that I can make a hasty escape without distracting people if I choose to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I was standing in the back of this session, and it intrigued me. And I thought, well, I may want to stay and listen to this one, not necessarily because I was positively affected by it, but was feeling negatively affected by some of the things that were being said. So I looked around, and it was a full auditorium, and I saw a single seat on the end, the far side. I thought, well, I go get that seat. So I went to the seat, sat down, and I sat down beside an older female who very, very nice and courteous. And we sat there and we started trading barbs about the speakers, and sort of struck up a conversation afterwards, and we started palling around during that meeting. And that person was Ruth Edwards, who was the president of MTNA at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
She was in the audience, and by chance, I sat beside her. We struck up a friendship, and by the end of the symposium, she said, Gary, we're looking for a new executive director at MTNA, and you ought to apply for it.
Always speak to your seatmate. Look at
Always.
that. Oh, that's
Always.
Networking, from a leadership perspective. When you look at that in hindsight, that's all about being open, being collegial, thinking about network. You never know who you're sitting next to, and you never know what's going to come from that.
Right.
That's
and again,
absolutely.
There's no accidents. There was no accidents that I sat beside her.
Right.
And again, the rest is history. I thought, well, why not? I had nothing to lose. And so I applied for the position. I called Maurice Henson because I didn't know anything about MTNA, being a choral guy.
Right.
And as a chair and a dean, I knew my faculty were part of an organization like that, but I didn't have a real deep knowledge of it. And when I talked to Maurice, because he was one of my professors in my doctoral work, and I said, should I, when they offered me the position, I said, should I take this job? And he was like, they've had a lot of turnover in that executive director position and the like, but, you really should do it because I think you could make a difference.
Yeah, make a difference.
So, as a result, I took the position, again, with the idea that I would be at MTNA for 3 or 4 years, get a little more experience, then get back into higher education. And 28 years later, it was time to retire.
And it really like a bulk of your professional life's work.
Yes.
Let's think. You've had some time to think because you retired a year ago about your incredible legacy at MTNA, which I know you still are deeply connected and still advocating and supporting and working for the organization as a supporting person.
CEO Emeritus. That lets you know that you're old.
It's a great title, though, because I think what's brilliant about that is you're still part of everything. And that's really important when we think about succession planning and transfer and, stewardship. This is really about stewardship.
Exactly.
Stewarding a community, a profession, an organization. When you look back on those 28 years, what are some of those, I don't want to say forks in the road or bright lights or exceptional challenges that you really, it helped you grow as a leader, helped you expand your leadership capabilities. And because what you did, you transformed the organization. So the first thing everyone asks is, well, how did you do that? I mean, if it was a unsure situation at the beginning when you came in, what did you bring at the beginning years? What were the challenges that were facing MTNA in those early years? How did you envision, or what process did you go through to envision the expansion of so many things, particularly in financial sustainability, scholarships and bursaries, foundation? I could see the roots of that now, the development side, and how you really created infrastructure around a membership organization that will give it longevity. And also amplify and celebrate all the people that make such profound contributions to the field. So what are some of those sort of places, whether they're mountains or whatever way you think about those things where you went, that was really transformative for me and for the organization?
Well, when I arrived at MTNA, the main thing that struck me at the time was that MTNA was relatively, more than relatively, but a very inwardly focused organization. All of their energies and efforts were inwardly focused, which is not bad, but there was very little outward focus. And a not-for-profit has responsibilities, and especially a 501c3. It wasn't a 501c3 at the time, but it was acting like a 501c3. And ultimately, one of the first things that I did was to get our tax status changed to a 501c3 charity, educational organization. And as a C3, you have this two-prong responsibility. You have the responsibility first and primary and foremost for the outside, for the public, because you're serving as a non-governmental organization, and the government gives your organization the tax deductibility provision in order that you will be an organization that the public benefits from. So you've got to have that outward focus. Well, we really didn't have it. And then the second part, of course, is the inward focus. And the lack of outward focus was evident in my first time to go to the NAM meeting, the music merchants. In January of '97, I contacted them about having an MTNA exhibit booth there, which they gave to all of the organizations free. And I took what I had from MTNA for the exhibit, and that was a backdrop that had the big letters MTNA on it, had it set up, and it was there. And everyone who came by looked up at it and said, "What's MTNA?"
Right.
No one in the industry really knew who MTNA or what MTNA was. So I determined at that point that that needs to be one of our first jobs, is to increase our visibility with not just music teachers, but with the entire music industry. So we started that, and I feel confident at this point in saying that MTNA is now firmly established in the consciousness of the music industry as a whole, and not just nationally, but internationally.
Absolutely.
And that became a subsequent goal, is that with technologies and all of that, borders are being eliminated. Any kind of barriers that might have kept an organization from expanding internationally were gone with technology. Although a proper associational experience is highly personal. It's intensely personal.
Right.
So there are so many things that can't be transmitted through circuitry.
Right.
So there needed to be a human presence. And at the beginning, I started engaging in many of the international organizations that you mentioned, as well as the International Music Council, which is a part of UNESCO. And I was on the board for it and became the executive vice president of it, in order, again, to have MTNA known as an important organization around the world. And I think, and I've heard it many, many times from many, many people, that MTNA is the gold standard for music teacher organizations globally.
Yes, and I think that your service, I think that's a really important thing about leadership and visionary leadership, if I may say, that you come in, you see the golden eggs, you see what an incredible organization it is, you see that it's kind of its own thing. And because of the way you are and the way you think and your innovation and your mind, like a global perspective, knowing how much time and energy you invested in the relationship building. So, okay, you sit by this person in the room that ends up helping connect you, who's the president of MTNA, but then serving on all those boards, building all those relationships, being a representative and engaging, taking MTNA into those networks, like that sort of open channel, not just a one-way conversation, but this is who we are, this is what we're doing, but I'm here to learn what you're doing, and how can we contribute to what you're doing? How can we be a partner? I think that collaborative perspective has been a cornerstone of your leadership in terms of how MTNA advanced itself rapidly into a position that no matter where you go in the world, everybody knows what MTNA is.
Yeah, and the other part of it is that while that was part of my vision for MTNA, and I should go back and say, one of my first thoughts with MTNA, besides the visibility, was that MTNA needed to reclaim its traditions. And if you go back to MTNA in 1876, it was a global organization. In 1885, the president of MTNA, who was elected, was Calixa Lavallee.
Yes, Canadian composer.
Canadian composer who, before he became MTNA national president, wrote the Canadian national anthem. So in the early days of the organization, there was multiple interactions between MTNA and Britain and Canada. They even had ambassadors, I think they call them, from these countries to come to MTNA and board meetings. So in a sense, the globalization was reclaiming our tradition as an organization. And what made it easier during all of these years was the fact that the new music teachers saw their teaching as a global enterprise. Music teachers today, the younger ones especially, I believe, see what they do from an international perspective, because by going online, they can communicate with teachers anywhere in the world.
Right.
So whether or not, it ultimately got to the point that whether or not I wanted MTNA to become a global organization, our younger members were demanding
Right.
that we be a global organization, and fortunately, it started working.
Yes. It's a good segue right now to talk a little bit about where we are now. And you've got a huge advantage of long experience with the organization, which really represents the profession. And we, no matter where we are in time, there are challenges and opportunities. They tend to be sort of either side of a coin. In your vantage point right now, what do you perceive as some of the biggest challenges that the organization and the profession will have to face or are facing? And what are some of those incredible opportunities? They might be the same thing. We're part of the same thing. But I mean, you've got that unique history, experience, and expertise, and what I would like to say is sort of a global philosophical perspective on music education at large, not specific just to maybe the direct practitioner. So where are we? What's happening?
Well, over the past 25 or 30 years, membership organizations like MTNA have been under duress as the generations change, as priorities within society change, with the development of technology that is the great benefit on the one hand, but it's the great disruptor on the other hand, especially for associations like MTNA that at one point in time was the only place a person could go to get higher education or continuing education, I should say. But with technology, a music teacher can go anywhere and get that. So I think the challenge for an organization like MTNA is to figure out how does it cope with the fact that membership organizations have been declining and may continue to decline until the pendulum starts swinging back the other way, and it always does. So my intent was that we can't control the membership numbers, but I could control the financial numbers.
Right.
And what MTNA need more than anything was to have a financial stability to see us through this time until the pendulum starts swinging back. So as a result, we consciously established a very, very large, sufficient cash surplus for the organization that could sustain it for years until things started coming back. So I think the question, at least for MTNA and some music organizations that are membership organizations, is the membership model still viable? Is it a viable business model in this day and time where people don't need to join or have to join an organization like ours or like MTNA? You've got to confront. Going back to Joseph Campbell, he always said, the hero is not the person that avoided the dragon.
Right.
The hero is the one who set out on the journey expecting to meet the dragon and fight it.
Right.
To whatever. The same is true with MTNA, and I think every music teacher. You're going to face the dragon.
Right.
And you can't avoid it.
So be prepared.
That's right.
Yeah.
So MTNA and every music organization is facing its own dragons. and it has to, keep pressing on the journey, because organizations like all of us are writing the story of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the story of my life, but MTNA has its story, and it's continuing to write that story. And it should be one of success, and one that continues to meet its mission and its vision and the needs of its membership.
Yeah. Hear, hear. Indeed. Before we start to wrap this up, I do have a question, one more question, then we'll come to our final question that everybody gets. But this is a question about in reflection. In reflection for yourself, what are the attributes, experiences, elements of yourself as a musician and that identity that have been and continue to be so important to you as a leader? Mm-hmm. What are the core things when you reflect on leadership that music and a life in music, because you could have run a bank, you could have run a Fortune 500 company, you could have done anything as a leader, but you dedicated your life to music because following your bliss. But what are these things that you experienced? I think this is especially for our younger generations to see that pursuing music and the value of that, not only in terms of the direct impact you have as a musician and a teacher and a conductor but what are the characteristics or the traits or the things that music gives you in your life that have been really helpful for you as a transformative leader?
For me, one of the major one is persistence. Anyone who's learned music and the craft, you've got to be persistent. And you're going to have setbacks. And everyone knows that being a music teacher today can be quite an arduous task. But be persistent. Have a vision for what you want your life to be, and set out on that journey. And knowing that, again, to paraphrase Joseph Campbell, when you're on that journey, there's always something in the hero's journey that they stumble upon and fall to the ground, and they start scratching around with it, and they find the gold. So I would say to younger ones, where you stumble and fall, there you'll find the gold.
Yes.
So don't be afraid of making mistakes. Keep being persistent, and if one thing doesn't work for you, like law school for me or being an administrator in the college, you take another path and you blaze your trail and you write the story of your life on a day-to-day basis, always searching for something deeper and more meaningful in every experience that you have.
Thank you.
It's just crucial. Vision, persistence, and of course, community. Building a community, having support of peers, and that's where being a part of organizations like MTNA, being engaged with the Francis Clark Center, it's that kind of collective experience and collective wisdom that you get by coming together that will sustain you for an entire career.
Really, there's my gold right there. All those wonderful thoughts. That's profound, and I thank you for sharing them. You've had just an extraordinary career, and we are indebted to you. We're indebted to your service, your vision, your dedication. You never wavered. You fought the dragons, and you brought all of us along with you. And as somebody who's been part of this organization for my entire career, and I've benefited immensely from it and immensely from your mentorship, it's so meaningful. And I'm so happy that you are still engaged and working with the organization and working with all of us. It gives us a lot of peace of mind because we all need each other right now. And I appreciate everything you do for the community at the local level, right up to the global level. And I've learned so much from you, and I will continue to learn a lot from you. It's been a rich, rich hour for me personally, and I know for everybody who's listening. We have a closing statement. Now, we use piano because it's the Francis Clark Center.
I understand.
And we say, piano inspires.
Piano inspires creativity. It inspires persistence. Piano inspires emotional well-being. It inspires enjoyment. It inspires your collective intelligence.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a first. Collective intelligence. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gary Ingle, for joining us. Thanks for spending time with us. We're so appreciative. I also want to congratulate you on your Lifetime Achievement Award from the Francis Clark Center. We are so honored to celebrate you, and we're grateful for your time and your wisdom today.
Honored. I am honored to be so recognized. So thank you for it.
Thanks. The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.